this team hasn't made the conference finals since Allen Iverson in 01 went on to win one game against the Lakers in the finals. And we give him half a ring for that one. But with the 76ers, again, it's another disappointing year. And this time with MVP. And in this game, he pretty much crumbled. You could see, 15 points is just something that cannot happen in a game with the probably one of the biggest games, if not the biggest game for him. And it's him crumbling again. We've seen him crumble against the Hawks as well. That was a ridiculous game 7 where they lost, and of course they could blame Ben Simmons in that one. But in this game, Embiid had 15 points. James Harden had 9 points, and bringing up Ben Simmons, looking in the fourth quarter, Simmons actually scored more in the last three Philly games. In the fourth quarter, he had 5 points. Harden had 0. So 0 points from your second star in the last 3 games in the fourth quarter. Embiid himself falling apart in the fourth quarter of these games. And, it's tough to see, but that's the reason why we like basketball. Players who do one thing, it's the same, that stays the same, and usually the right team wins. And in this occasion, too, the right team won again.
Embiid, you can struggle shooting if you're the MVP. You can have a poor performance, but for Embiid specifically, for just the fact that he's offensively so gifted, he led the league in scoring. Scoring is such a big part of his game. Take 4 shots in the third quarter when your season is slipping away, when the Celtics are making a 33-5 run on your team. And, the Celtics are locking him down defensively. They built a wall. Horford there's some big picture Horford stuff now happening with multiple playoff runs, stopping guys like Embiid, Giannis, just series after series being a defensive menace. He was in this third quarter once again. Embiid, and of those 4 shots that he took, 2 of them were just heaves at the end of the shot clock, pretty much meaningless shots, no chance of making. One of them was blocked by Horford. The other one, obviously, he missed. He was 0 for 4. Just no good looks in the third quarter when your season is slipping away. He was 4 for 12 in the first half. He wasn't shooting well then either. But to come out in that third quarter, there was just an apparent lack of aggressiveness from this entire team. And just he seemed sweatier after the first quarter of this game than he did in the third quarter. The third quarter, the Celtics basically put him away, ended their series. And this is probably now one of the, if not the worst game by an MVP in the season that they won MVP, because the other 2 games that really stand out are 85 Bird in game 6 against Philly, 4-14 from the field, 8 turnovers. They lost, but they turn around and they win game 7. They go to the finals that year. And Steph in 2015, game 2 versus Cleveland, 5 for 23 from the field, 6 turnovers, but they won that series versus Cleveland in 6 games. This for Embiid was game 7, season on the line, series on the line. Really, and now as we're seeing the ramifications as well, like the direction of the franchise on the line, and you're basically get one good look in a third quarter when the Tatum on the other end is putting your season away. It's just offensively, it's one of the worst performances we've seen from the MVP in a playoff game.
Yeah, and the 76ers already have their scapegoat. They fired Doc Rivers yesterday. And, this is something that Doc Rivers has been doing the last 20 years. 2003 was the first time he blew a lead, 3-1 with the Magic against the Pistons. Blew a 3-2 lead the next in 2009 with the Celtics against the Magic. Blew another 3-2 lead the next year against the Lakers. Blew another 3-2 lead in 2012, 3-1, and then 2 3-1 leads, one in 2015, one in 2020. Both with different teams, and then this year blowing that 3-2 lead. And Rivers fired after only 3 years with the team, so they kind of already got their scapegoat. They kind of got the person who I guess the team is blaming, because you can't really blame Joel Embiid. But Embiid, like you mentioned, this is the probably worst game by an MVP, but also he's the first and only MVP, or not, maybe not first, but only MVP person to not have a conference finals appearance. And it's definitely going to be interesting to see how it goes these next couple of years. I know there was a big push to not have Jokic get his third MVP in a row. I think it's because it's his third one. There has been a lot of mention by MVP voters also that the campaigning did get nasty. It did get targeted. It seemed like there was stuff going on. And so, after all this nastiness, after all the stuff going on, and Daryl Morey and how the 76ers complaining about fouling right before this game. We've seen his history, with him getting ticky-tacky about stuff, and just a little underhand stuff. It was just so much pressure on Embiid, and so there's just so much for him to finally show up. You've been complaining about it this whole time. You guys have gotten personal with it. You definitely come at people for it, mentioning, it was all these Boston voters who weren't voting for him and stuff like that. And now you finally get the award. You finally get the fame you wanted. You got the attention, and now you got to actually prove it on the court. And just him falling apart in this fourth quarter, and not just hit this fourth quarter or fourth game or this game 7, but the last several games, he had been not showing up in the fourth quarter. His production just suddenly, go downhill. It's going to be interesting to see what this team does in the future, because they don't really have too many moves. It looks like their second star in James Harden wants to go back to the Rockets. He's kind of done with his experiment. He's kind of been all over the place over there on the East Coast. And, after that, even if Tyrese Maxey takes a step, Tobias Harris has shown again to not be a reliable player in the playoffs. I think we've been known this. And after that, there's not really any serious pieces on this team. So, another disappointing end to Joel Embiid's playoff run, kind of similar, kind of all the same beats of him getting injured, losing in the conference semifinals, making it close. But, this, you can only do the same thing so many times. And at some point, you got to look at him. But I don't know what the 76ers do moving forward with their MVP.
Is Morey going to be the guy long term that is going to fix this team? Because, the Harden thing was good. The return on investment on that trade in Houston was a crazy trade to get Harden at that stage in his career, for him to become what he has become, the career that he's had. But that was almost a decade ago at this point. And if you just look at the second stars that Morey paired with Harden, Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, never getting him another guy that was at the peak of their powers in like the prime of their career. The Chris Paul thing was close, but was definitely not in his peak. Same with Westbrook, definitely for Dwight Howard. And then to turn around and give Embiid Harden when Harden is on the decline, not at the peak of his powers. And all of those teams, the Rockets teams, this Philly team, have come up short from a depth standpoint. They've never had enough guys going into these playoff series to, just mix up the rotations, to have counters to these other teams' moves. And to come into the season and your main signings be PJ Tucker, Daniel House, Montrezl, to run back those Rockets teams when they were short, when those teams were not enough 5 years ago. And now you're trying it again in 2022. And it's just, if you can't pair your star with another player at his peak, if you can't give your team and build them depth and win in these draft picks, win in these free agent signings, this is where the GM separate themselves. And Morey now has a decade where these teams have just been missing these major pieces around these stars at the peak of their powers. So, the Morey Embiid thing is going to be interesting, because those are the two untouchable guys, it seems like, in Philly. Morey as the GM, the head, the guy, give him the power. Let Morey do what he wants to do. Let him run the organization the way he wants to run it. Embiid as the MVP of the league. But these might be the two guys with the biggest question marks for the Philadelphia 76ers.